Hey guys, welcome back to another video. Hope y'all having a great day. And with the Brendan Sorsby, um, I don't really know what to call it, but with that whole situation now officially being over with Sorsby leaving Texas Tech and officially entering the NFL Supplemental Draft, which I think comes up in maybe a couple weeks. So I figured I would talk about it because I was gonna make a video back when he was allowed to come back to play for Texas Tech, which I thought was crazy. So I figured I'd go over the timeline of what's happened and give my perspective on what's going on. So let's get into it. And I mean, this has been a hot topic in the sports world ever since it was announced that Sorsby, um, who were transferred from Cincinnati to Texas Tech back in January. And then later on, it was revealed that during his time at Indiana, before he was at Cincinnati, he was betting on both Indiana and the teams they were playing, which is unspeakable, in my opinion, to like bet on your own team and the teams you're playing against, essentially, to earn money when you're seen as like a star player. He wasn't at the time, but he was seen as Indiana's future more than likely before he left. Um, and then he was denied eligibility, which I thought was the right move because he shouldn't be allowed to play after betting. I know he went to rehab um and was like getting help with his gambling, but still, the guy did bet on plenty of games, thousands of dollars he bet. So it did make sense that he shouldn't be allowed to play. And then it was just recently, yeah, he somehow was able to get a judge, which the fact that he was able to get a judge to sign his way, despite clearly being, um, what's the word? Um, clearly being a thing players should not be able to do and get away with, which kind of shows that it doesn't matter what the NCAA says. If you can get a judge to sign your way, you're going to get your way because the NCAA has no way of of being able to affect what happened. Like before this Trinidad Chambliss was denied an extra year, then he finds an Ole Miss fan who's a judge and was able to similarly get an extra year. Now that was a different circumstance, but it still was the same because both players were denied by the NCAA, and yet were still able to get injunctions and were able to play. Now Sorsby will not be playing as of recently, due to a lot of the blowback that happened since last week. Um, yeah, last week when it was announced that he would be eligible because schools have come out saying they didn't want to play him. The Big 12 was going to, not allow Texas Tech to make the playoffs, get fined. So it was clear that there was a bigger blowback than Texas Tech thought there was going to be. Like, right, the Big Ten, even some SEC schools, the Big 12, like a lot of these schools were saying, why would we want to play Texas Tech, football when they have a guy who bet on his own team and was somehow still able to play? So Sorsby took it into his own way, realizing that he didn't want to hurt Texas Tech's season. Because if he had played, there would have been more than likely a bowl suspension, not allowing Texas Tech to make the college football playoff and not being able to compete with the rest of the top schools in the country. So this made a lot of sense that Sorsby would make this decision. Like, if there was no blowback after he was allowed to come back, I think he would have stayed at Texas Tech. But with how much blowback from, specifically the Big 12 and then Big 10 SEC schools about not wanting to play Texas Tech because of the fact that they were able to have their quarterback who bet on games, yes, from a while ago before he was ever on Texas Tech, but it just doesn't set the good precedent that you want if you are the NCAA. And so I think Brandon Sorsby was like, well, we would rather, or he would rather, just enter the NFL Supplemental Draft. We'll probably get a suspension, um, just like Terrell Pryor did when he left school early, um, but was also suspended. So whatever team picks him up will more than likely carry the same suspension he had in college, and we'll just have to see if we'll just have to see whether Sorsby is able to have a productive NFL career or if this kind of stagnates him and he ends up not being much. But I am glad that this has come to an end with a positive swing of Sorsby choosing to leave instead of kind of being forced to leave. Because if I kind of felt like he was going to stay at Texas Tech, he was going to stay and play football unless there was some repercussions from him being able to play after betting on his school and against Indiana back when he was a freshman, I want to say. So I'm glad to see that this story ends, at least on a high note, because now Texas Tech, yes, Sorsby was their guy, and this will hurt them, but I still think they'll be a pretty good team. They still have a couple guys in that QB room who could, um, be really solid, like Will Hammond, who a lot of people thought was better than Baron Morton last year when he was playing when Morton got injured. So, maybe they go with him, maybe they go with somebody else in that QB room, and they still are able to compete for a playoff spot and winning the Big 12 instead of basically this year being a wash year where like they're just going out there playing the 12 games. And who knows if they would have been really able to play those games because teams might have maybe canceled those games or tried to change them if Sorsby had played. So who knows if Texas Tech would have even had a season this upcoming year with all the blowback that's happened with schools not wanting to play them due to all the backlash it has caused. So that that is interesting, but I do think it creates the Big 12 to have maybe another new champ. Arizona State in the first year, Texas Tech last year. I think this could open up to see like BYU, Utah, maybe Oklahoma State, Arizona. Some of those schools, maybe Kansas State comes out of nowhere, who maybe with, how good Sorsby is, maybe without Texas Tech is still really good, but not as great as they could have been. And it allows other schools in the Big 12 to be able to compete and possibly make it to a college football playoff with a more now wide open race in the Big 12 now that Texas Tech still has to figure out that quarterback position, which might create some interesting developments as we get closer to the season. But let me know down in the comments what you guys think. And I hope you guys like this video. kind of doing, content like this, like I did a couple weeks ago with the AJ Brown and Miles Garrett trades. Not really doing weekly videos, but keeping up with some of the bigger news throughout the summer. So hope you guys like, comment, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. And I'll catch you guys in the next video. But until then, hope you have a great day and bye.